Thank you all so much for taking some time to be with us today on this gorgeous sunny day in Washington to mark the introduction of the Protect Children Through Safe Gun Ownership Act. And the very first thing I'm going to do is to thank two people on my staff, and really a lot of people on my staff played a role in bringing this legislation to life. But Mezariah played a huge role, and Janae Washington is really responsible for this introduction. So I want to thank both of them very much. So listen, on my very first day in Congress in January 2019, I joined the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. I was inspired by students at home in Michigan and students across the country who rose up and demanded action in the wake of the Parkland school shootings. Our nation is plagued by a public health crisis of mass shootings, of homicides, of suicides, and of accidental deaths, all caused by firearms. The United States continues to have the highest gun violence rate among all developed nations, by far the highest. We've also continued to have the weakest gun safety laws, and we continue to ignore study after study after study, showing that stronger gun laws are linked to fewer gun deaths. After Sandy Hook, we said, never again. After the Orlando nightclub shooting, we said, never again. After the Parkland, Florida shooting, we said, never again. Most recently, we were forced to say never again once more after the tragic mass shooting at Oxford High School near my home in Oakland County, Michigan, which claimed the lives of 4 innocent teenagers just around my daughter Molly's age. Let's be clear. Thoughts and prayers are no longer, and in fact have never been, enough. As many as 4.6 million children live in homes with at least one loaded and unsecured firearm. Children finding easy access to firearms contribute to preventable tragedies such as school shootings, youth suicides, and unintentional shooting deaths among children. As a father of 4, I am adamant that we must protect all of our precious children from gun violence. Responsible gun ownership includes preventing children from having access to firearms in ways that allows them to harm themselves or others around them. Parents or other guardians may teach their children how to use guns, that's fine, but they must do so in a safe and supervised environment. It's past time for our country to enact gun safety laws that will save lives and protect our children and communities from gun violence and lifelong traumas. That's why we're here today, introducing the Protect Children Through Safe Gun Ownership Act. This bill has 3 common sense and straightforward proposals to protect the lives of our youngest Americans. First, it places sensible limits on transfer to and use of handguns by minors. It requires a parent or guardian who allows a minor to possess or use a handgun to have actual knowledge that the juvenile will be in the presence and under the active supervision of the parent or another adult who is allowed to do so. Second, it includes a secure gun storage requirement and allows victims or their family members to sue if there's a death or physical harm resulting from a firearm not being properly stored. And third, it creates a grant program through the Department of Education so eligible school districts can offer parents best practices for keeping guns away from kids and guidance on how to teach age-appropriate gun safety. The Oxford school shooting was an eye-opening example of the extreme danger unsecured firearms pose to minors of all ages, in both extreme and heinous crimes like that one and in everyday accidents. With the Protect Children Through Safe Gun Ownership violence. But we know in order to get any meaningful gun reform legislation, whether that's comprehensive background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, or other measures, to President Biden's desk with our current slim majorities, we'll need serious filibuster reform or to abolish the filibuster altogether. Whatever it takes, it must be done now. I can't look at a grieving community and fearful families, I can't look them in the eye and tell them nothing can be done because of the dysfunction of Washington. It's completely unacceptable, and far too much is at stake. We must keep proposing innovative solutions and working with our colleagues to see them signed into law by President Biden, who's all too ready to do so. Today, with my dear colleagues and supporting organizations behind me, I say the time for action and restored American leadership is right now. Thank you. Next, we'll hear from my friend and colleague, Congressman Jake Auchincloss. The speakers will introduce each other, and then we'll have some Q&A. Jake?
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon. As a Marine officer, I had the privilege of commanding Americans first in Afghanistan and then in Panama. And as infantry and reconnaissance platoons, we employed a range of weaponry, from sidearms to assault weapons to heavy machine guns to mortars. And in order to have the privilege and the responsibility of bearing those arms, Marine officer candidates spend 3 months in basic training, sleeping, eating, patrolling, training with unarmed weapons before they're even allowed to handle ammunition. Once given the right to even load the weapon, we then lock weapons in the Marine Corps behind 3 locked doors every night. 3 locked doors. Because despite being, and in fact because it is one of the most densely armed institutions in the world, the Marine Corps understands that safe storage is just common sense for keeping people safe. My home state of Massachusetts has a safe storage law. It works. It has saved lives. Representative Levin's bill takes these common sense reforms and applies them to the national stage. We have a Democratic Congress. We have a Democratic president. It is time for us to abolish the filibuster and send gun safety legislation to the president's desk so that we can protect American children. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Representative Casten from Illinois.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Andy, for introducing this important bill. I want you all to listen to what people are saying here today and ask what's the first thought that comes into your head when you say, boy, here's some Democrats standing up here talking about safe storage bills. And what's the first thought that comes into your head? Do you think they'll get it to the floor? Do you think they'll get it through the Senate? Will it survive the filibuster? I would suggest to you that we are not nearly angry enough right now. My God! Every day in this country, 22 kids get shot. By the end of this year, another 8,000 kids are going to be shot. We simply take it for granted. When I was a kid, we had fire drills in my school. Now, as a parent, my daughter went and mobilized with the local police force to run a drill to teach kids how to apply tourniquets because they are the first responders in shooting events. We have simply decided as a country that that's okay. This isn't a hugely ambitious bill, with all respect, Andy.
It's not.
This is about safe storage. This is about saying we put tamper-proof caps on our drugs. I don't give my children access to our chainsaw. My God, why can't we just say we're not going to give kids access to guns? And keep in mind, this is bigger than that. We have more guns than people in this country. If we got rid of half the guns in this country, we would still have more guns per capita than any other country in the world. We have more gun deaths in this country. The number one cause of gun death is suicide. Why? Not because we have more mental health issues, but because we give people access to the tools to make really rash decisions in anger or in depression that lead to the end of life. So for anybody who thinks this bill is somehow a bridge too far, my only question for you is, why do you hate children so much? I don't want any more kids to die. Get this thing done, and then let's do a lot more. Thank you, and I now turn over to Christian Heine, the Vice President of Policy at Brady United Against Gun Violence.
Hello, my name is Christian Heine. I'm the Vice President of Policy at Brady United Against Gun Violence. I'm just so happy and proud and honored to be standing up here talking about this bill here today. What we are really talking about is a common sense approach to have an impact on gun violence in America, a problem that we experience here in America unlike any other industrialized nation in the free world. Every day, too many children are dying because of the easy access to weapons, and we know that this is something tangibly that gun owners have to be a part of in order to create a solution. This bill addresses that directly. The terrible shooting on November 30th at Oxford High School underscored how dangerous it is to allow minors to have access to guns. This was not an isolated event, however. There were a record number of school shootings last year, 3/4 of which were made possible because of these unsecured firearms found in the home. We can do better and need to do better in order to protect future generations of children that have to live on in the trauma that we are creating by not seeking solutions to this very preventable problem. And Congressman Casten brought up an excellent point too. 3 out of 5 gun deaths in America are firearm suicide. And we know we can have a tangible impact on firearm suicide, especially among youth, if we require safe storage in the home. These are not complicated, they are not difficult, and frankly, these are solutions that most responsible law-abiding gun owners throughout the country do just to make sure they're doing their part to fight against gun violence. 8 children and teens are unintentionally injured and killed every single day by guns found in their home or the home of a relative or friend. These are tragic and preventable instances of family fire, shooting that involves an improperly stored or misused gun found in the home. I can just tell you personally, not only am I the Vice President of Policy here at Brady, I'm also a survivor of gun violence. My mom was killed in 2005 from an incredibly preventable tragedy. It didn't have to do with safe storage per se, but it's one of a litany of problems that are preventable that this body can do something about. And I'm just going to say one more thing, Congressman Levin. I could not agree with you more about the filibuster. We have these bipartisan solutions that Americans across the aisle want to see get done, and the only reason we can't is because of the corrupted use of what President Obama has called a relic of the Jim Crow era. We have a saying at Brady where we know that this is not just a procedural tool that is being used to obstruct. The filibuster is killing us. Every single day that the filibuster remains in place to prevent sensible legislation like this from making it to the president's desk, more Americans die. More Americans like my mother are killed in cold blood every single day we allow that to exist. And we can and should do better. I'm going to turn things over to my incredible colleague, Isabel, with March for Our Lives.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Isabella Delasio, and I'm a policy associate at March for Our Lives, which is a youth-led gun violence prevention organization founded after the school shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. We have a profound gun culture in this nation that takes the lives of over 100 Americans every single day. For most people, gun violence is not something that occurs only once in their lifetime, unfortunately. When I was just 4 years old, my life began with an unregistered, unsecured firearm in our house that would be used by my mother's abuser to threaten her life as my sisters and I hid in the other room. When I was 18, I watched as my former elementary school classmates in Parkland, Florida were gunned down just 20 minutes away by a young person who had access to firearms for a long time. He took the lives of 17 people in my community that day. Gun violence is not a one-time occurrence. We need to take action to keep our communities and our youth safe. Just like me, 4.6 million children live in homes with access to unlocked or unsupervised guns. Although many parents may think their children do not know how to access their firearms, studies have found that 1 in 5 children have reported that they do know how to access their parents' firearm. This leads to a profound danger, increasing the risk of suicide, school shootings, and accidental shootings. This bill is a step in the right direction to promote safe storage among gun owners, provide a critical grant program for safe storage education, and require adequate supervision before a minor can possess a firearm. This is common sense. We want to applaud Congressman Levin for introducing this legislation, which provides proactive solutions to address gun violence in our country and ensure that we are keeping young people in our nation safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Isabella. And I want to, before I open it up for questions, I just want to mention that I'm really proud of the original co-sponsors as we launch this. In addition to the 3 of us, I just want to say their names. Lucy McBath, my classmate, and an incredible leader on these issues. Karen Bass, Robin Kelly from Chicago, another big leader on these issues. Kathy Manning, Joe Nagoose, and Andre Carson. We're actually really from all over the country, and it's really a great start for this bill. Okay, and so if anybody has questions, we're happy to do our best to answer them. And if not, or it looks like you may have one.
So the gun culture is so ingrained in America since the point it was founded. I mean, how do you battle that?
So we're not really trying to battle the gun culture at all. I'm from Michigan. I won't get into what we did when I was a kid, with BB guns and so forth. But I think there's a healthy place for people who love to hunt or to target shoot or whatever. This is about, that's as if to say, God, I'm from Detroit, right? God, we love cars in America. So how could you be for seat belts? How could you be for airbags? How could you be for red lights? How could you be for the dozens and dozens of ways we control driving and control the use of automobiles to keep us all safe? And yes, yeah, absolutely. So, I think this really doesn't limit people's ability to do all the activities they like to with guns. It just requires them to have a modicum of common sense when it comes to kids having access to guns. Jake?
I think Andy's analogy with the car industry is a perfect one. I would just say this is really what I would try to port over from the Marine Corps is that safe storage is actually part of gun culture. It is across the aisle, Republican and Democratic gun owners by huge majorities support safe storage because they know it's a personal responsibility of theirs as gun owners. This bill is meant to address and make federal and standard and transparent our expectations as a country for people who own guns, and to try to prevent the negligent or bad actors who decrease safety. So, I mean, safe storage is part of a healthy gun culture that we want to actually inculcate.
Yeah. And actually, when I mentioned cars, I didn't even mention the child seats, right? I mean, when I was a kid, there were no child seats, so we've added them. We've saved, countless kids' lives just from doing sensible things, and still love our cars in Detroit, 100%. Yes. Let me just say that for those of you who are interested in the details of this, because there was a lot of focus on the secure storage aspect, which is super important, but I just want to emphasize the other aspect, the limitation on written consent to provide a juvenile, to permit a juvenile to possess a handgun. And so I just want to be clear that currently under 18 U.S.C. 922, transfers of handguns to juveniles are limited to situations involving legitimate purposes like hunting and sporting and so forth. And in such instances, the juvenile must have the written consent of the parent or guardian. So what are we doing here? We're adding that the juvenile has to be supervised when they use the handgun. That's not current law, so a parent can give written consent, and then I suppose the juvenile could have a gun on another day and go shoot up their school or whatever. So this says that it simply broadens the existing limitation by amending 18 U.S.C. 922 to add a paragraph that prohibits parents or guardians from providing written consent unless the juvenile will be actively supervised by that parent or by another person who's not prohibited from owning a handgun while the child is using the handgun or has possession of it. It's just basic common sense. Any other questions? Thank you all. By the way, I forgot to thank the band, so let's all give it up for the marching band. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Really, thank you so much. Really great to meet you. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, of course.
Yes, you too.
Yeah, of course.
Not a mission.
No, whatever. Do it anywhere you want.